Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the course of world history. I am your host, Mr. Samuelson, and today we are getting into the Industrial Revolution in our unit on imperialism as a whole. So this will be one of those foundational pieces to looking at imperialism. So our essential question is essential task, rather, to trace the development of British Industrial Revolution from its origins to the spread of railroads. So that is right when it gets started to when it is, full swing. All right, so the origins of British industry. So the Industrial Revolution really does begin in Great Britain. That is where the key inventions, the key innovations are occurring at the start of the Industrial Revolution. And Britain really is an ideal location for this because of their expansive empire. They have colonies spread out throughout the world, markets for their goods, and also places for them to gather their natural resources from. So access to resources, markets for their goods. This is a good thing to have if you're trying to develop industry. Now, in addition to their colonial territories, remember that Great Britain has also worked to keep Latin America independent. And that really works into the 18 teens, 1820s, which gives them additional markets as these new Latin American nations see Britain as a benign protector and therefore are willing to give lots of trade deals to Britain ahead of other powers. So how does it then get started in Britain? And the irony of the Industrial Revolution is that it is agricultural innovations that allow for the Industrial Revolution. New farming techniques in Britain and a couple of other places as well, but particularly in Britain, were significantly increasing food production. Britain was making a lot more food than before. And this increased the spending power of British farmers and decreased the demand for labor in the agricultural sector. So we needed fewer farmers, and the farmers that we did have were getting more and more money for their product. And as these farmers get more money for their products, they're then able to spend their money on manufactured goods. Some things that were real luxuries in the past are now more and more affordable to the farming middle class. Additionally, during a period of remarkable instability in Europe itself, Britain was stable. So as the French Revolution is going on and as absolute monarchies are competing with revolutionary ideas throughout Europe, Britain has kind of figured out how to walk this middle line. They achieved this by really instituting regular but small reforms. And those regular but small reforms kept people feeling like, all right, the monarchy and the British Parliament, they are listening to our concerns. They are making these reforms, but all of the reforms were measured. They understood what the likely outcomes of those reforms would be and created this idea of stable progressivism, that slow march toward greater freedoms and equalities for the British people. So where does it all start? Well, it all starts in the cotton textile industries. This is the driver of the Industrial Revolution. It was invention and modifications to invention in those industries that really pushed tremendous advancements. Now, the first one, 1765, a man by the name of James Hargreaves invents a hand-powered machine to spin cotton into thread. This is an example right here. This is an advanced model of Hargreaves' spinning jenny. So by spinning this wheel right here, a single person can take cotton fiber and turn that into cotton thread. And then that cotton thread can later be woven into cloth. Now, this one person can do a fair amount of work with this spinning jenny, but when Richard Arkwright uses a water frame and water power in mills, he's able to do even more work with a series of spinning jennies with fewer people tending the machines to make more and more thread even more efficiently. So this creates the first factories. Arkwright's water frame required water power, so he needed mills. He needed mill power to do this. So these first factories were specialized mills that used water power to spin the machinery that would power these mills. And they were very popular, very successful. And soon he had several hundred spindles going at a single time, producing more thread than Britain had ever been able to produce before. And in the economic terms here, the more you can produce, the less money you can charge for your good, and the less money you charge, the more demand for your product exists. So he's got the market cornered and is doing very well here. And soon his factories are employing as many as 1,000 workers to do this. Other inventions soon followed to take the thread of Arkwright's mills and create cloth out of it, and the textile boom in the industrial industry revolution is in full swing. So, labor conditions. What was it like to work in these? Well, early on, it wasn't horrible. Actually, early on, it was pretty good. Early in the Industrial Revolution, wages were high, working conditions were good. And in 1790, weavers, the people who would turn that thread into cloth, were amongst the highest paid low-skilled laborers in the country. You could be a weaver and make a very good living without, any advanced education. But as larger factories start to replace the smaller ones, and as profit starts to drive this industry and competition eventually drives prices down for this cloth, it will be the laborers that suffer. Wages will decrease. They'll cram more and more people into more and more crowded factories. And eventually, people start to turn away from this sort of work. They don't want to do this sort of work. It's dangerous, claustrophobic, poorly lit, hot, nasty work that the pay is now dropped for. So we actually get into a situation in Britain and in America as well, where orphaned children become a large source of labor. They're cheaper, and their hands can fit into the machinery itself, and we start to see children as young as 5 being employed in these mills. Keep in mind, small hands can get into the machines, but if you turn off the machine, you're starting to lose profit. So there were certainly several occasions where these young children lost their hands getting stuck in the machinery. Labor conditions were not great. All right, the problem of energy. Early mill factories were successful, and they started popping up along rivers all throughout England and eventually in America too. I'll talk about that in a moment. Because they needed swiftly moving rivers to spin the water wheels. Slow moving rivers wouldn't spin it. You need this water wheel to spin quickly. You need a fast moving river. So certain rivers, certain locations on the river were really ideal. And pretty soon, all that real estate is occupied. You've run out of space. All the best mill areas are used up. But industry wants to continue to expand. So in order to do this, we did need a new source of energy. Now, draw your attention down here. This is a Slater Mill in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. This is the first mill in the United States. The result of industrial espionage. Samuel Slater worked for Arkwright, memorized the plans for his mill, snuck out of Great Britain to America, found funding, and built his own Arkwright-style mill in America. And that is how the American Industrial Revolution got started, stealing technology from another country. All right, so advancements in energy sources, energy technology. In 1769, so not too long after the spinning jenny, James Watt received a patent for a new type of steam engine. This engine will change the world. Now, originally, it wasn't used to create mills. It was a much smaller device, largely used for pumping water out of coal mines and stuff like that. But by the late 1780s, as the Industrial Revolution is now in full swing in Great Britain, Watt's steam engine is improved to use on an industrial scale. See, we had to look at the supply of land available for mills. And once the water mill land is no longer available, now we're willing to spend more money to open a factory away from the river. So let's see what we can do with this steam engine to scale it up to industrial scale. So using coal as a fuel, you burn the coal, You boil some water, the water steams, it spins the engine, and now we can power a factory that is not near water. You can actually move it closer to your sources of labor and maybe even save a little bit of money on labor expenses. This goes one step further, our end point of the lesson with railroads. 1825, George Stephenson has the idea to put one of these steam engines onto a locomotive frame and see if a steam engine can power a railroad. And in fact, it can. This is his device right here. Now we can move goods between one place and another on a railroad, cutting costs for transport and making that transportation faster. It's so effective that by 1850, England, Ireland looks like this, with permanent rail lines connecting the entire country, making it easy to move both resources and people across Great Britain. This greatly decreased the cost of moving materials, which of course decreases the cost of purchasing those same materials. And now manufacturing is in full swing. Costs for manufactured goods have dropped to the point where most people can afford to buy them, and industry's booming. This is going to be something that really launches Great Britain into an even more prominent spot in world power, and we'll get into that soon. But that's it for today. I do hope that you learned something. I will see you next time. Farewell.